This week on Arizona Illustrated, we'll take a trip on the Catalina Highway, analyze the impact of concussions in football, join the Green Valley Camera Club, and to wear seatbelts or not in 1988. Welcome to Arizona Illustrated. I'm Tom McNamara. You might know it as the Sky Island Scenic Byway, the Mount Lemmon Highway, or by its official name, the General Hitchcock Highway. Whatever you call it, the road to the top of the Catalina Mountains is one of the most scenic drives in the Southwest, a breathtaking 27-mile journey known to most as the Catalina Highway.
Driving on the Catalina Highway is similar to embarking on a cross-continental journey in less than 30 miles.
It's a great place, really close to be able to experience some different scenic views than the deserts. You get to see a lot of cool things, and if you're quiet enough, you get to see some animals and stuff, so it's really cool.
This is a North American hotspot of biological diversity and geological immensity. Mount Lemmon is one of our region's sky islands, an oasis of green in a desert sea thanks to dramatic gains in elevation and precipitation.
With elevation, you get a drop in temperature and you get an increase in rainfall and precipitation. So Tucson gets about 12 inches of rain a year, and the top of Mount Lemmon gets about 30 inches of rain at about 9,000 feet. My name is Dr. Kevin Bonine. I'm a faculty member at the University of Arizona in the College of Science. I do a lot of teaching in ecology and evolutionary biology and do education outreach.
And these conditions, he says, create an ideal location for learning and amazement. It's an ever-changing environment thanks to the different life zones you can find in a relatively short distance.
Here we are at about 4,500 feet, Molino Campground at Molino Basin, and you can see that the predominant vegetation here is grass with a few oaks interspersed. And we have lots of different species of oak, and they exist in different microhabitats on the mountain. We've got some prickly pear cactus that still hang out here and do okay in this colder environment, but we've lost our saguaros. We've lost a bunch of the species that are down in the Sonoran Desert.
Welcome to the Mount Lemmon Science Tour. Let's talk about
A mobile app from the University of Arizona College of Science can also take you on a guided tour as you make your way up the mountain. It addresses topics such as water, fire, and some of the other outstanding features.
It all starts with the rocks. As you travel up, you're seeing amazing layers of rocks in the road cuts, and you're seeing ridges and mountains on every horizon formed by rocks. And you're seeing across the wide, flat Tucson Basin filled with rocks. All these rocks tell a story, the story of how this place came to be.
One of the most popular places to stop on the Mount Lemmon Highway is Windy Point, and it's one of the stops that's recommended in the Sky Island Mount Lemmon Science app. So this is a place where you can see the geology, you can have beautiful vistas of the landscape, and you really get a sense for these sky islands in a desert sea.
I didn't really know what to expect. I've been in mountains prior to this, the Rockies, the Smokies, but it's a different terrain. It changes every time we go around another curve. I'm really enjoying this scenery and wanting to climb out there. It's a nice view from up here.
It's just a beautiful highway, and my father conjectured that the engineers who put it in wanted to take advantage of Windy Point, and so that they added a few extra miles in making that long loop, but it was worth it.
For Tucson resident Mary Ellen Barnes, the Catalina Highway is akin to a gigantic backyard full of fascinating memories at different altitudes. Barnes grew up in the 1940s between Tucson and Summerhaven at the top of the mountain, and she even learned to drive on the Catalina Highway.
Well, it was absolutely wonderful. We had the freedom of roaming all over the mountain or riding all over, hiking. Although we did work in the store, starting when I was 12, in the old O'Neill store, I remember. I probably wasn't a very good salesperson because I would eat a candy bar now and then.
She's the author of various books, including The Road to Mount Lemmon, which addresses this region's rich attributes and her family's connection to the land. Her father was Tony Zimmerman, one of the pioneer developers there last century.
My father had the store and the inn, and he was also a realtor, and then he ran a sawmill and supplied lumber for people on the mountain, plus for people in Tucson. Old Tucson had a lot of lumber from Mount Lemmon in it.
Construction of the highway began in 1933 and would last 17 years. A prison camp provided labor for several years, but it was later converted to a camp for interned Japanese Americans during World War II. They were also forced to toil on the project. This area is steeped in history and experiences, including more recent events such as fire.
Soon, on the steep slopes to your left, you'll see the trunks of dead trees, trees that died in the massive aspen fire of 2003. And the forest is only beginning to grow back. That same fire also destroyed much of the town of Summerhaven on Mount Lemmon.
Fire is a big part of the history of these sky islands in the Southwest. The interaction between climate, fire suppression, and natural fuels buildups, as well as people living in places that are frequented by fire, led to some interesting dynamics a little over a decade ago. When I bring students up here on field trips and I tell them that basically it's like driving from the Mexican border to southern Canada, they're thankful that they don't have to sit in a van for that long, but they're really surprised at what's right in their backyard and how different the vegetation and the landscape is up here.
We're approaching the end of our tour now. Thanks for traveling with us on the Mount Lemmon Science Tour. We hope that you'll go for a hike in the Catalinas or the Sonoran Desert or both to experience the sights and sounds and wonders of our Sky Islands region.
It's mid-January, a time when many Americans are focused on football. The college bowl season comes to a close and we're deep into the NFL playoffs. But there is a growing controversy at all levels of football: head injuries. Concussion Watch, an interactive online tool by PBS Frontline, tracks every officially reported head injury in the NFL. Its tally is up to 166 concussions so far this year. Well, now researchers are teaming up with student athletes to explore what that might mean for the sport and those who play it.
Can you pee for me? Yeah. Don't fill it up.
It's the day after a football game at Arizona State University.
You awake?
And tired student athletes stumble in to see medical assistant Yana Gadayev.
All right, what do you want to do first? Pee?
They hand her saliva and urine samples before grabbing a snack.
Thank you, sir.
And getting on with the day.
Appreciate it.
It's become a routine, but every sample offers a clue to what happens in the brain when players collide.
It's the impact of a car accident that these professional and collegiate football players are encountering. So on a daily basis, they're going through car accident after car accident after car accident with these games. And those are the impacts that can cause concussion. Well, a concussion, by definition, is alteration of function of the brain when there is an injury to the head.
As a neurologist and a member of the National Football League's Head, Neck, and Spine Committee, Javier Cardenas spends a lot of time thinking about what we know and don't know about concussions. Researchers know that one concussion puts you at greater risk for a second until you recover, and that 98% of those who suffer a concussion do recover. It's what researchers don't know that has put concussions at the center of a controversy.
The controversy is around what's called CTE, or chronic traumatic encephalopathy. And this is not something that's new to the field of brain injury. This is known and has been well known in boxers. It used to be called concussion hemorrhages. It used to be called punch drunk. Harrison Martland in 1936 initially described these things. And he actually described a clinical presentation in which these boxers, these former boxers, would go through these emotional and mood changes. Fast forward now to seeing football players and more microscopic changes, specifically tau protein, in the brain of these football players who had suffered multiple injuries and were having these similar changes in their mood and behavior.
CTE has been found in people with a history of repetitive brain trauma, and that has raised concerns about the long-term risks of concussion.
Okay, look straight ahead.
To understand and prevent CTE, Cardenas says we need to understand concussions too, and get better at diagnosing them.
Right now, there's a lot of subjectivity in the diagnosis of concussion, whether or not they have symptoms, whether or not when you're doing an exam you can detect an error in balance or an error in thinking. That's very subjective. So identifying a marker which tells us they've been concussed or not, that's most important. Finger, hands at your side.
That's where the ASU football team comes in. Cardenas and colleagues at the Translational Genomics Research Institute, including geneticist Matt Huntelman,
this run's going to be okay to use.
Yep. I think number 5 looks pretty good too, actually.
teamed up with the Sun Devils to search for markers or biological signs of damage to the brain.
The theory here, the concept, is that when your brain experiences an injury and repeated impacts might be considered an injury, that we would see a change in this chemical in our body that's already there, but we'd see a change. And the chemical that we follow for this study is RNA. It's a sister chemical to DNA. And we use the RNA as our indicator of changes that might be happening in the brain.
Student athletes who volunteer for the study wear special helmets that record every impact they experience by sending signals to a computer on the sidelines.
Hey, what's up?
Hey, how's it going?
Blessed, how about you?
Fantastic, here we go.
Before and after games, and whenever they suffer a concussion, they provide blood, urine, and saliva samples. The idea is to search their samples for clues to how collisions on the field alter the brain.
It's really about how the brain reacts to multiple head impacts. And of course, football is a sport that's great to study for that. We care about concussions, of course, but we also care about those athletes that never experience a concussion but get hit a lot. So they have a lot of head impacts. And does that mean that their brain is doing okay? Or is there some injury there that we don't know about? And can we use our biomarkers as an indicator of that? Let's say that the impacts you experienced during the game set you up for a concussion during the practice week. We'd like to know that so we can help those players avoid that concussion, right? So if whatever they experienced during the game took them to the very edge, but they didn't tip over into getting a concussion, we want to know that so that on Tuesday, they don't go out and go full-on, full-contact practice.
For Sun Devils head coach Todd Graham, the team's participation in the study is a chance to help its players and a sign that football is changing.
I was a defensive back, and I had a lot of episodes where I experienced, head trauma, and they'd give you smelling salt, and you went in. We kept going. I never missed a play. You never missed a practice because you had a head trauma. No one knew anything about it.
Graham says the team now emphasizes safety and awareness more strongly and takes head injuries much more seriously. Techniques have changed too, so that student athletes learn to move and tackle in ways that help them avoid injury.
What we're doing right now is probably pretty primitive to where we can be, and that's why we need to be proactive in this research, in this study, to help protect our players and protect our game.
The culture change is significant, but it's also very new. New enough that even the team's young players remember a different approach.
And I still remember, like September of 2011, and I was a sophomore, junior in high school. And it happened, obviously playing football. When I hit the guy, I literally seen stars, like stars just blinking. And, unfortunately, my team needed me, so I kept playing, but I definitely had a concussion.
Before, if you had a headache, it was like, oh, that's probably nothing. It just comes with football.
Cardenas and his colleagues are now in their third year of the concussion study. They hope their results will change the game of concussion diagnosis and treatment, and change the stakes for those who face the greatest risks.
Until recently, the #1 cause of a traumatic brain injury was a car accident. Crumple zones, airbags, seatbelt usage, stability control are all things that have contributed to the safety of cars so that motor vehicle crashes are no longer the #1 cause of brain injury. The #1 cause of brain injury right now is a fall. The same can be said for sports activity. So you think about all the things that can change with a sports activity, including changing the way people tackle, changing the rules of the game, improving the helmets, improving techniques so that you reduce the risk of injury.
No one wants football to go away. We're all football fans. But we want to make the game safer for the players. We want to extend their careers and keep them on the field. We can still have the game we love, but have it be safe for the players to participate in for decades of their life. We have to find that right balance.
That's a balance that more and more young players are eager to strike.
And we're blessed enough to have these talents that God's given us to play football, but at the same time, reality is it's just a game. It would be a tragedy. It would be a tragedy if you were to, get hit so many times or deliver blows so many times that, you can't even think straight, 20 years down the road.
Like what you see on Arizona Illustrated? Visit our webpage at azpm.org to watch and share videos from this episode. You'll also find stories from future programs, an easy way to submit your own story idea, an archive of past episodes of Arizona Illustrated, and you'll find everything you need to stay connected with public broadcasting in Southern Arizona. azpm.org. Photography is both a science and an art. It's also a source of joy for many people, and sharing the science, art, and joy of photography is the mission of the Green Valley Camera Club.
First of all, I didn't want to come to Arizona. When I retired, I wanted to go to Florida because my daughter lives in Florida. But my husband suggested we try Arizona. I was here 2 days. How can you not love the mountains? How can you not love the desert?
We're retired. You're used to having a full day. I don't want to say it gives you something to do, but if you've got an interest, it's a way to express yourself and do things. And the Green Valley Camera Club offers things to everybody, and it keeps you busy.
2 other Rons just bought the P600.
Yeah, it's a good print. This is better.
Really?
Colors are better, more saturated.
Our club has been around a really long time. I'm going to be wrong when I say how long, but it's like over 20 years. And a lot of these guys have been the original members of the club. And so they've known each other a really long time. A lot of them are really, really good photographers.
Is there any way you could get those people out of the background?
Yes, but I'm lazy.
I like the people in the background. This was what we call Photo SIG. SIG is a special interest group, and they meet every week, Tuesday morning. Each person brings up to 5 photos to share. Some of them are really great, and some of them are just like show and tell from their last trip they went on. But we are theoretically supposed to give a little feedback. It's like we're gentle.
Yours? Yes, mine. Are those flowers? Are you drunk? Special interest group where people bring their shots. The group critiques everybody else's pictures in jest and in seriousness, depending on the level of who the person is. The wind up there was blowing about 30 miles an hour at the time.
How far are you from them at this point?
At that point, actually, I'm using my 600, so
That wasn't it.
I'm a ways away, but they ended up coming right up to us. I like to travel, and I just came back from taking photographs of the polar bears up in Churchill, Manitoba. My wife says, will you look at the bears and put the camera down? It gives you an impetus to go to places where you may not normally go, to be able to get some images to bring back to show to friends and whatnot.
We try hard to get the entire range of skill levels here. We think we're one of the biggest camera clubs, period. I don't know for sure, but you have so many varieties of interest. You're not going to find any one person generally that goes to all of the activities, so we have enough to make 867 people happy. Our goal is to get to 1,000. We do a lot of things besides education. We do field trips out in the community.
Okay, now everybody look up between so we can see you. Now we're going to take several. Cheese. And the famous one, what is it?
Cheeseburger.
No, sex.
I think we are ready to get started. The tour should last about an hour. Everybody ready to go?
Yeah.
Awesome. So let's go ahead and go on inside.
You've never seen a younger bunch of old people in your life. They might, on some given days, walk circles around you.
The Grevy zebra is very highly endangered. It is one of the most endangered species in the African savanna. More endangered than lions and elephants and all of those.
Well, today was a field trip that I arranged called Behind the Scenes for the zoo. And this gives them a chance to see some of the things the public can't see, and they get to pet the rhino.
One at a time or a few at a time, we can come up and touch. I can't promise how long she's going to stay here, so if you want to touch her, right now's the best time to do it, and we're going to stay away from her head.
I take them on a lot of different field trips. We've done things like roller derby. I've gone to several ranches. I have a mystery trip every year for them. Can't tell you where it is, because I'd have to kill you.
There will be 4 photo opportunities inside. We have some animals waiting for us.
I'm just kind of learning. I haven't traveled very much. I bought a new camera and I wanted to learn how to do photography better than what, point and shoot would do.
I've always taken pictures, but we always differentiate in the camera club between taking pictures and taking photographs, because there's a difference. So I think when you spend some time editing it and getting it ready for production, I think you become a photographer. So I'd say all of my life I took pictures. Probably the last 5 years I've become a photographer.
Well, one with digital, the cost is free. I mean, you can take 1,000 pictures and throw away 999 of them, and if you got one.
You can review your photos, although I seldom do that when I'm out on a shoot. Usually I go home, I can't wait to get them on my computer so I can look at them. It's popular because I think it gives people the opportunity to see places they wouldn't see normally. And the camera club here is incredible. The one in Green Valley, it's one of the largest ones in the country. So you have some incredibly talented people, incredibly talented.
People who may not be an artist with pastels or oils or things like that feel they can get a piece of that artistic credibility themselves with a photograph.
Somebody admired one of my photographs and they said, I'd really like to buy that. And I said, really? And I have a wonderful business going. So I sell photographs all over. I've had exhibits all over. A teacher of fourth graders. Who knew?
Motor vehicle accidents are a leading cause of death in the United States. And research has revealed that using a seatbelt is the most effective way to save lives and reduce injuries in crashes. In 2012, a government survey reported that a record high 86% of people said they regularly use their seatbelt. That was not the case when this story aired in 1988 from the vault.
Most cars on the road today are equipped with seat belts, but it is clear that many people choose not to use them.
No, we don't like seat belts, but we use them part of the time.
But more and more people are using seat belts these days.
We're a seatbelt wearing family.
I've never used them.
Why is that?
Until recently, because a friend of mine got me into using them, and now my daughters are getting me started on it. And I think it's a very good thing.
We estimate here in Arizona, we can eliminate at least half of our traffic fatalities just by wearing seat belts. We could also reduce a great number of our accidents where there's injuries involved if people were in seat belts. There's too many accidents that are happening where occupants as well as drivers are being thrown into the dashboards or ejected out of the car.
Honestly, I don't use them too often, but what we do use is I've got 2 kids and we have the child restraint seats. And so we always make sure they're buckled up. But as far as myself, to be honest, I don't use them too often.
Arizona's child restraint law was changed last year to allow officers to stop cars in which young children are not restrained.
She's the first one to get the seatbelt on. It's a regulation on base to have seatbelts, so it just more or less became a habit to put on seatbelts.
Some experts say that whether or not you use a seatbelt can determine the extent of your injuries in an accident, or in some cases, whether you live or die. The state Supreme Court has ruled that the use or non-use of seatbelts can determine the amount of money you receive in a personal injury lawsuit. Some say that the ruling is good and that those people who don't buckle up should be held at least partially responsible for injuries they receive. But others say it violates the constitutional rights of those who choose not to use seatbelts, at least until such a law is on the books.
I think it's going to cause a lot of people to start thinking a little bit more as they travel or drive a car, that if they are injured, there's going to be consequences they're going to pay for not wearing the seatbelt.
The Arizona legislature is expected to consider a mandatory seatbelt law for the state this year, expanding the current law beyond children to the general population.
Thank you for joining us here on Arizona Illustrated. Next week, the Depression Session, raising voices with the Reveille Men's Chorus. I'm Tom McNamara. See you next week.